So how does one person, over just a single night, manage to rack up a fine big enough to buy a small apartment? We're about to dive into a legal case that all boils down to one simple but really fascinating question. When does one bad decision become 8?
This number right here is at the heart of the whole story. 800,000 new Taiwan dollars. That's about 25,000 US dollars. It is a massive, massive penalty for a quarantine violation. The real question is, how on earth did it get that high?
And here's the detail that makes you scratch your head. The person involved, a Mr. Zhang, was only outside his apartment for a grand total of 51 minutes. So how does less than an hour of breaking the rules add up to such a huge fine? Well, to understand that, we've got to look at exactly what happened.
Okay, let's set the scene. It's June 2022. Mr. Zhang Weiping flies into Taiwan from the UK and is put under a mandatory 3-day home quarantine. What he did next isn't up for debate at all, because it was all caught on camera.
This is the actual log from the court records, and wow, the frequency of these violations is just wild. Look at this. The first time he leaves is at 9:44 p.m. He comes back, but then he's out again just 4 minutes later, and this pattern just keeps going all night and into the next morning. 8 separate exits in less than 12 hours. Some of these trips were for just a single minute, others were longer. But it didn't matter. Every single time he crossed the threshold of his apartment, and that, it turns out, is what counted.
So, as you can imagine, this series of exits kicked off a major legal battle. The city of Taipei fined him for every single breach. But Mr. Zhang fought back, arguing it was all just one continuous mistake, and that set up the central conflict that the courts had to resolve.
And right here, you can see the two sides of the argument laid out perfectly. Mr. Zhang's side was basically saying, hey look, this was just one bad night, a single lapse in judgment. You should treat it as one event, based on the total time outside, 51 minutes, and that means one fine. But the city government, they saw it completely differently. For them, every time he walked out that door, it was a new decision, a new act, and a brand new risk to public health. So 8 acts, they said, equals 8 fines.
So how did the legal system even begin to untangle this? Well, both the Taipei High Administrative Court and then the Supreme Administrative Court had to figure out a clear way to count these violations, and they were really methodical about it.
This quote from the court's decision, this is really the key to the whole thing. The court said his actions were based on different intentions, so they had to be treated as 8 separate acts. In their eyes, it wasn't about the stopwatch. It was about the number of times he deliberately chose to break the rule. It all came down to intent.
The court also relied heavily on this really critical definition from the Ministry of Health and Welfare. And it's simple. For quarantine, the legal zone ends right at your apartment's front door. The second you step into any public space, the hallway, an elevator, the lobby, even the roof, you are legally outside the quarantine area, period. This meant every single one of Mr. Zhang's little trips was a clear violation. The court actually formalized this by using a 3-part test from Taiwan's Administrative Penalty Act. Let's break it down. First, different intent. Did each trip have a different purpose? The court said yes. He went out to smoke, to get food, to meet a friend. They weren't all one thing. Second, distinct time and space. Did going back into the apartment reset the violation? They said yes. Each time you crossed the threshold to leave, it was like starting a new violation from scratch. And third, a new risk created. Did every exit create a new and separate danger to others? Again, the answer was yes.
And that risk wasn't just some abstract idea. The court records pointed to specific, dangerous moments. I mean, he actually met and escorted a non-quarantine friend in and out of the building. He ran into other residents in the elevator. In one case, he only put his mask on after someone else had already gotten into the elevator with him. Every exit just completely defeated the whole point of quarantining by reintroducing risk into shared public spaces.
So, when you put all of that together, the different reasons for each trip, the reset that happened every time he went back inside, and the fresh risk he created with each exit, the court had a very clear path to its final conclusion.
And the final verdict, which was upheld by both the High and Supreme Administrative Courts, was crystal clear. They sided completely with the government. 8 separate acts of leaving quarantine meant 8 separate fines. The debate was officially over. The specific legal term the court used is shu xingwei, or shu xingwei, which basically translates to several acts or multiple acts. And under Article 25 of the Administrative Penalty Act, if you have several distinct acts, they have to be punished separately. Why? To make sure the law actually achieves its goal, which in this case was to stop the spread of disease.
So Mr. Zeng's main argument that the fine should be based on the total 51 minutes was completely rejected by the court. They reasoned that the law wasn't just about punishing someone for how long they put people at risk. It was about deterring the decision to create that risk in the first place, no matter how short. And all this leaves us with a final, really interesting thought. This case gives us a clear legal answer for a quarantine situation, but it makes you wonder about the broader picture, right? In our own lives, when we make a series of related bad choices, when does one single mistake turn into many? It's a question about intent, action, and consequence that goes way beyond any courtroom.